Hi, everyone. Welcome to Kidco Talks. My name is Emily Burrows. I'm one of our marketing coordinators here at Kids and Company, and thank you so much for joining us today. I wanted to welcome our speaker, Alana Metallo, who is a sleep expert and founder of Metasleep. Hello, and welcome back to Kidco Talks. Metasleep Consulting provides sleep training that helps families establish healthy sleep habits through personalized guidance and practical strategies for restful nights and overall well-being. Today, during the Kidco Talk, we're going to learn about winning bedtime battles with toddlers, how to tackle bedtime struggles, minimize night wakings, and create a peaceful routine so that the whole family can rest easy. Webinar participants, we do have the chat open. So throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the Q&A section, and we will try our best to get to your questions at the end during the Q&A period. I will be facilitating the chat for that. Alana, over to you. Welcome back.
Okay, thank you all for taking time out of your busy day to join me and to talk about challenges with sleep. I just want to let you know, obviously, you are not alone in this challenge. There are, hundreds and thousands of families who are experiencing trouble with babies, toddlers, school age, even adult sleep. So know that, there are strategies that you can put in place to help your family get the sleep that you need and you deserve. Yes, today we are talking about winning bedtime battles with toddlers. And you have toddlers, and so do I. And so you know all about the struggles that can happen at bedtime and how much we can often dread when bedtime rolls around. So we will get right into things and learn about how we can make things a little bit more brighter when it comes to sleep. So just a little bit about myself. My name's Alana Metallo, and I am the founder of Metasleep Consulting. I've been a classroom teacher for the last 19 years. And before that, I was working in childcare. I have my early childhood education as well. This year, I have taken a leave from teaching. My passion has really been drawn towards helping families live a well-rested lifestyle. So I am fortunate enough to have taken a step back from teaching this year to really focus on helping families get rest and build this business. So I'm so happy to be here and share, all of my sleep expertise with you. I'm also a mom of three. I have three daughters who are 11, 9, and 4. And having a 4-year-old, I know very much, what you're going through. I was in your shoes at one point, and I did hire a sleep consultant myself because we were struggling with sleep. My eldest daughter at 6 months wasn't, sleeping as well as she could be. She had a pacifier, and every time it fell out of her mouth, I was back into her room, putting it back in for her. And this was happening, sometimes like 7 to 10 times a night. And I was exhausted. And I essentially had a mental breakdown one day. And I said to my husband, I can no longer survive on no sleep. I don't know how mothers do this, but like maybe I'm not cut out for this gig. I used to watch Cityline, and a sleep consultant would appear every now and then. And I said to my husband, I was like, see that lady? I'm hiring her. Don't care how much she costs, but I hear she's amazing. And we did, and she changed our lives forever. And I thought I could implement those same strategies with my second daughter. But if you have multiple children, you know that children are not created equally. And the strategies that work with one of your children don't necessarily work with the other. So there we were, hiring her again. And she did come back and help us get sleep back into our lives. And from here, this is where my passion grew. And I started implementing strategies into my own home and then helping friends and family get their children sleeping well. And from there, I really just loved helping people. And so I later went on after my third daughter was born to get my certification to be a sleep consultant. And so here we are. So, you're in the right place. Like I mentioned, you are, not alone in this process. And, I'm here for you. And there are so many resources out there that can help. And, today we're going to conquer, a few things. And we'll have a Q&A at the end. And if you have any questions that pop up during the webinar, feel free to put them into the chat. And then I will also share my contact information with you at the end, in case, you didn't get to your question answered, that you can reach out to me afterwards. But today we're looking at, why toddlers struggle with sleep. There are a few reasons, top reasons, I will say, that we will, kind of touch base on. We'll talk about the sleep environment. That's a really important piece as well. We'll talk about routines, key factor. We'll talk a little bit about screen time. We all love a little bit of, some good screen time, but we'll talk about when we should kind of be turning that off to promote healthy sleep habits. Preparing for sleep success. We really want to take our kids on this journey with us. And we can do that by helping prepare them for what's to come. Kids don't like surprises. And so we really do want to set them up for success by setting, a really solid foundation going into making changes that are going to happen to sleep. We also are going to touch upon how we can minimize night wakings. Is your, toddler who's in a bed, coming to your room multiple times a night? So what can we do to kind of alleviate that from happening? As well as a sleep training strategy that I use with all of my toddler families. And it is very effective when, implemented correctly and followed consistently. So we'll touch base on that one, and then we'll have the Q&A at the end. So, like common question, like, why is your toddler struggling with sleep? And, toddlers are at this developmental stage where they are, seeking independence, really finding, ways about themselves. And they're curious about, like, that cause and effect piece. If I do this, what are you going to do in return? And I mean, our toddlers are very cute and cuddly and, not in a malicious way, but they are manipulative. And so they really know how to get their way. And so as parents, we want to give our children everything. And we really do kind of have to take a step back and really establish clear and consistent boundaries so that our children know what to expect and when to expect, certain behaviors. So that is one thing that, is a common reason our children are not sleeping well, is because there aren't clear and consistent boundaries in place for them. There's a lot of separation anxiety that happens at this age as well. They start to become afraid of the dark. No harm in having a nightlight. Nightlights are a great tool to use for your toddlers so that they can, feel more safe and secure in their environment. Sleep needs. Maybe your child's sleep needs are not being met. Depending on the age of your toddler, we really need between, 11 to 14 hours of sleep, including a nap if your child is still napping. And so typically they should be sleeping about 11 hours overnight. Between, 10 to 12 is the average range. But 11 is, very typical for toddlers to be sleeping. And we're looking for consecutive hours of sleep, not broken up by, wakings or feedings or anything like that. And, maybe if your toddler is waking up, multiple times a night, and they are, 3 or a little bit, approaching 4, it is maybe time to cut the nap out of the equation, because if you're getting too much daytime sleep happening, it starts to cut away at our nighttime sleep, and that can cause night wakings and early morning rising to happen. So you want to take a look at, the age of your toddler, sometimes the readiness. Like my toddler, she was 2.5 when she stopped napping. Girls tend to stop napping sooner than boys do. Not all the time, but it is, a common trend that we see. And so, if you are noticing a lot of early morning rising, struggles at bedtime, night wakings and things, and your child is falling asleep independently, it could be the schedule that you have in place for them needs some tweaking. Um, a lot of families that I work with are putting their toddlers to bed too late. Bedtime should fall between 7 and 8 p.m. Nothing earlier, unless you've had like a horrible night. Maybe your toddler's still napping and they've missed a nap. And so then we want to bump bedtime a little earlier. I try like the earliest bedtime can be is 6 p.m., but for toddlers, I really like to have the earliest is 6:30 p.m. Especially if your toddler's sleeping 12 hours. I mean, they're going to be up by 6:30 in the morning. And so it's not that they're up early the next day, it's they've had a full night of sleep. So, we do want to take into the account of, what time our children have to be up in the morning, to maybe get to a childcare center or, school or anything like that. So, this needs to be factored into, your scheduling in that. But this is the sweet spot for sleep. And so if your child is going to bed during this time frame, great. If they're going to bed after 8 o'clock, we really have to look at your scheduling and try and break bedtime earlier so that they are not overtired when it is time for bed, because overtired toddlers are rambunctious. They look like they're not tired. They've got a second wind. They're zooming around your house. They're acting silly, throwing themselves on the floor, not wanting to get in the bath, not wanting to put their pajamas on, all of the things, right? And so if you're seeing those types of behavior, your toddler has reached like the point of no return. And so it's always better to put them down a little earlier than a little later. And so you really want to also make sure, that we are really working on teaching our children independent sleep skills. And so, many of us, lie with our children to fall asleep. And, sometimes that works for families, right? They don't mind, laying for half an hour while their child falls asleep. But this can be challenging when you have multiple children at home, or you have work to do, or your bedtime is like unpredictable. Some nights it takes 20 minutes, some nights it takes 50 minutes, some nights it takes 2 hours. You really want to have a predictable night every single night. And so you can, have that in your home. And, these are, common sleep associations that we see, the co-sleeping, the laying with, rocking, holding, feeding. These are all, strategies that we use as parents to get our children to sleep. And while they are super effective strategies, they aren't sustainable long-term. And they are generally not sustainable when you have multiple children in the home or have work and other things to do. So this is why we look to make changes to sleep. One of the things we really want to focus on is a sleep-friendly environment. Like, what does your child's sleep space look like? We obviously want it to be an inviting, a welcoming space that your child feels comfortable in. We want to spend time in that space. We want it to have things that they are familiar with and know and love. We also want to make it conducive to sleep. And so what that looks like is having blackout blinds and blackout curtains. I have these in my own room as an adult. It's not as prominent this time of year. I mean, I live in Canada. I don't know, like everybody's from all over, but I'm from Toronto and it's winter and it's dark and cold and, the sun is not always shining. But, we use blackout curtains and blackout blinds year round. And this is to prevent that external light from coming into our sleep space, especially, in spring and summer months when our children are going to bed. between 7 and 8 p.m. and it's still bright outside. That natural light, signals to our body that it's time to be awake. But we want to signal to our children's bodies that it's actually time for bed. And so we do need to create a dark space. And so that means, using dim lighting during routines. Maybe instead of having the overlight, on, you just have a lamp on. We want to keep it, a nice, calm, and relaxing sleep space. Sometimes I'll go around in the spring and summer months before I bring my daughter up to bed, and I will go around and close all the curtains upstairs, just so that second floor of our home, looks like it's ready for bed. But sometimes my 4-year-old asks now, it'll be 5:30 and it's dark outside, and she's like, "Oh, it's time for bed." I'm like, "Well, actually, it's not time for bed yet." And we're working on like reading the clock now, right? Just that first digit on the clock. So, we do have to help them out with these types of things. And so we want to set up the environment that works best. Using a white noise machine, so a sound machine. Again, we still use one for my 4-year-old. If you have an active household, multiple children, pets, or want to have a life after your kids go to sleep, get yourself a sound machine if you don't have one. We recommend using it on either white noise or rain. And that's because these are consistent sounds. They stay the same the entire time. And so we want to turn them on when our children are, getting into bed and we are, getting ready to, call it a night. We don't want to keep it on during our routine because sound machines not only block out external noises, but they, put us into that nice and calm, relaxing state and can often make us very drowsy. Drowsiness, can be good, but we do want our children to be alert and awake when they fall asleep. We want them to be aware of their surroundings. Children become, alarmed by the fact that if they fell asleep in a certain position, maybe on you or beside you, and then they wake up out of a sleep cycle, we sleep in cycles, and you're no longer there, well, that's startling to them. Like imagine you had fallen asleep on the couch and your partner brought you upstairs to your bed. You would wake up going, "Oh my gosh, like, how did I get here? Did someone bring me here? And, what happened? Did I walk here?" And you really like get your mind going and you get worked up about these things, right? So the same thing happens with our children. So we want to make sure that they're always, aware of what is happening. And if you are lying with your children to fall asleep, make sure that they are aware that you're not going to be staying there all night long, that you will be, heading back to your own sleep space once they are asleep. You also want to make sure your kids are dressed appropriately for, the temperature of your home, the climate that you're in. Make sure they're not too hot. We don't want our children overheating during their sleep. And as well as we don't want them to be too cold. So, every, room in the house has a different temperature, it seems these days. So, figure out what the temperature is of your space and make sure that you're dressed, accordingly for that space. We also want to make, as much as we want our, children's rooms to be that welcoming environment, we really want to, eliminate a lot of like stimulating toys. Um, Obviously, like a few books and a few, little things here and there are perfect. But when we have a lot of things in the room, it can be overstimulating and it can actually make our children distracted for sleep because they, can see all of these beautiful things that they have access to. And so we want to keep it, kind of, boring, calm, cool, collective. And so we want to, keep the space, kind of as, clean as possible and, limit the amount of toys that are available in the room. Many families like to introduce a comfort item, a lovey, a stuffy, sometimes it's a blanket. This way your child has something to, hold on to that makes them feel comfortable. Some children have zero interest in this, and that's okay. 2 out of 3 of my children were not interested in a blanket, a stuffy, nothing. Whereas my third, she has 2 blankets that she has been attached to since birth. And she, takes them everywhere, with her. And so, try it out if you haven't. If they don't take to it, like that's okay too. But then there are families who have, 25 stuffies in their bed. We really do want to, limit to 1 to 2, stuffies or loveys in the bed, because it just becomes too distracting when there's so many going on. If you do have multiple and your child isn't spending, time playing with all of them at bedtime and they are, settling for sleep, then I mean, you don't, if it's not broken, like don't fix it kind of thing. But if you have multiple stuffies in the bed and your child is spending a lot of time, playing, that dramatic play kind of is taking place when we really want them to be sleeping, then you really want to look at minimizing how much is in the sleep space. Like I had mentioned, a nightlight is great. And the last thing here for your sleep space, a rise to shine clock. If many of you might own the Hatch. The Hatch is a great tool. It has a sound machine. It has a nightlight. There's also the Hatch that has the clock on it. There are so many amazing features to the Hatch if you don't have one already. And I do really recommend this device to all of my families, from babies to toddlers to school age. And because it has so many features that you can set for when your child should be going to bed and when they should be waking. And we really want to use, color cues for our younger children who cannot tell time, as to when they are to be going to sleep. You can set it a specific color, like, okay, like when it turns green, blue, let's say, it's time for bed. And when it turns green, it's time to wake up. And there's so many colors. Your child can choose whatever color they want. Like my daughter wanted it to be rainbow when she wakes up in the morning. So we have it set for 6:45 in the morning. And at 6:45, when it turns on and turns rainbow, she knows that she's allowed to get up and get out of her room. Before that, she's not supposed to come out of her room. And so if your child is coming out of their room, before these scheduled times, we do have to, and we will talk about it a little bit more, walk them back to their sleep space. If we, just let them kind of continue on with their day when they're coming out of their room, too early in the morning, if it's like 5:30, this is too early to start the day, right? The earliest we ever start our day is 6 o'clock in the morning. While that does seem very early, it is, when we signal morning. And so if your child is waking up before that time, we do want to be walking them back to their sleep space if they are in a bed, so that they can, wait in their room until it is time, to wake up. The nice thing about the Hatch is, if you are experiencing those early morning wakes and you want to tweak your timing, you can just go onto your phone and you can adjust it to make the light come on a little bit earlier that day. And so it is a really great tool to have. And if you don't have one, absolutely look into one. Routines are essential. Not only do children thrive off routines, so do adults. And so routines allow our toddlers to feel safe and secure in their daily life. They set up that predictable environment of what's going to happen next. And so quite often what happens with families that I work with is they've tried so many different techniques to get their child to sleep that their child is now confused on what they're supposed to do and when they're supposed to do it. So we really want to choose a strategy. And although it's going to be tough, and I promise you it will be tough in the beginning with toddlers, and actually any age, but toddlers especially, they have a voice. If they're in a bed, they have access to your home. It is, work initially. So, we do want to make sure that we have clear and consistent boundaries in place so that they really know what to do and when to do it. And so, when you are making changes, you've got to stay consistent with it. I know it's hard. Consistency in general is hard, but I promise you, if you stay consistent, the changes will happen. Changes with toddlers can take a couple of weeks to set in. It's definitely not magic that's going to happen overnight. It can take 1 to 2 weeks at the minimum for things to get into a good place. So, you've really got to be prepared that it does take time, patience, and consistency to see these changes happen. And routines help our children prepare themselves, like I mentioned, for what's going to happen next, including sleep. And so, we do want to have a bedtime routine, which we'll, get into so that they know what's going to happen. And honestly, when you have a consistent routine in place, your toddlers can run the bedtime routine with or without you. Which is nice if, you're leaving your kids with a babysitter or a relative or, whoever it may be, so that you can have a night out. It's nice when they have a predictable routine in place that they know what to do and when, that they get to show this other person who's caring for them how it's done. And that makes them feel really proud of themselves as well, right? And that's really what we want to do with our toddlers is we really want to encourage their independence. We want to increase their confidence. We want to, promote decision making on their part. But also, like, there are certain things that are non-negotiables. Sleep is one of them. And so, we do want to, have something in place that is clear and consistent for them. Visuals also really help a lot of children. The families that I work with, I provide them with a routines chart that they place, in their bedroom, in their bathroom, that shows step by step what happens in your bedtime routine, and it caters to specific families in the order that they do things. The order that I have here might not be the exact same order that you do, and that's okay. But you just want to have an order and you want to stick to it. That's the important piece. So, here I have just kind of a sample bedtime routine. Even before your bedtime routine starts, like you want to have a snack before bed. Toddlers are famous for finding excuses on why they shouldn't be going to bed. I don't want to go to bed. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I'm this, I'm that. They've got, 100 things on their mind. And so they're always going to find a stalling tactic, right? So we have to be ahead of them. So we are going to offer a snack before we're heading upstairs. So if your child's bedtime is 7:30, then by 7 o'clock, we need to start a bedtime routine. Your routine should be no longer than 30 minutes. If it's longer than 30 minutes, you're doing too much. And when it becomes longer than 30 minutes, it really makes your child more tired. It's a very long, drawn out process. If you can crunch your bedtime into 20 minutes, amazing. We want to make sure things are happening in the same procedure, and that they're happening in a more relaxed environment. I know that bedtime can be chaotic. I have 3 kids and I'm often managing bedtime alone. Yes, my children are older now, but they weren't always this age. Managing bedtime with multiple children is a hard job on its own. And so we really want to try and tackle everybody at once. And so, staying on a bedtime routine with everyone makes a big difference. It doesn't mean everyone has to go to bed at the exact same time, but the routine can happen with everyone. We need to give our toddlers a heads up that bedtime is coming. They're not going to be necessarily happy about it, but they need to know that it's coming. And so, we want them to be aware. So set that up for them. We want to have a bath or a wash up that happens, toileting, if your child is potty trained or in a diaper, whatever that may look like, brushing teeth, pajamas. And then we want to engage in a quiet activity. Reading is, a favorite. Not all children respond well to reading books before bed. That's okay. Engage in a quiet activity in their room. May it be coloring or Play-Doh. You can do meditation. You can do yoga. You can sing songs. You can talk. There's so many things that you can do to wind down your child's day. And so, and then, when we are, tucking them in at the end of the night, we do want to have a consistent phrase that we say with them to kind of let them know, like, bedtime routine is over and we are, heading into bedtime. And, whatever that phrase may look like, as simple as, good night, I love you, I'll see you in the morning. A consistent phrase. You don't have to have the same phrase as your partner or the grandparent or whoever's taking care of them. Just a phrase that you consistently use is important. And then, like I had mentioned, sound machine at the end and lights out. Screen time. And I'm just realizing that time. Screen time, listen, all of us, maybe not all of us, a majority of us do allow our children to have access to screens. May it be a television, a phone, a tablet, a computer, whatever it may be. This is all great. You can absolutely continue screen time. We just know that the blue light that comes off of screens it prevents our, melatonin from getting to a place where we'd like it to be before sleep. And so the stimulating content that our children are often watching, let's say YouTube videos, is a little bit overstimulating to be watching before bedtime. So we don't want our children to be falling asleep to videos on a device of any sort. So we want to cap screen time at least 60 minutes before bedtime. So if your child's bedtime is 7:30, by 6:30, there's no more screens happening. So that means from when they come home to 6:30, you can have screen time. They can have screen time in the morning after they've woken up if they're not having early morning rising every morning. Some families that I've worked with, their child was up every morning at 6 a.m. So their parents gave them the iPad to, so the parents could get more sleep. But then what this does in turn is encourages your child to wake up at 6 o'clock so that they can have their iPad. So we encourage you to, try to wait 20, 30 to 30 minutes after your child's wake time, more so if they are having these early morning wakes. So we want to keep screen time away from that early morning wake so that we're not promoting it to happen. I had mentioned this in the beginning. We want to take our toddlers on this journey with us to make changes to sleep. And depending on the age of your child, you can get them more involved. And so, really at the age of 3 is when we like to see children transition from crib to bed. Does it happen sooner than that in some households? 1000%. But by the age of 3, your child has the developmental capabilities to understand, consequences to things and to understand that they need to stay in their bed. And so generally before this age, children really struggle with the concept of, I have to stay in my bed. And it's not that they're doing, anything malicious. They just don't have the developmental capabilities to, understand that I have to stay in here. This is where I'm supposed to sleep. So this is why we encourage families to keep their child in a crib as long as possible, unless there's a safety concern of them crib jumping and things like that. I had mentioned get your child a rise to shine clock. That really helps with signaling bedtimes, awake times. The routine chart, visuals help tremendously. Pictures with words as well, or just pictures. We really want to model changes that we're going to be making or expectations that we have of our children when it comes to sleep. We want to model for them what that looks like, right? So, take them into their room, show them what you want them to do, show them what you're going to be doing. This is a real key piece so that they know what's going to happen. Like I said before, they don't like surprises. And so if you're just going to go tonight and change the way sleep happens, you're going to have a rude awakening. Right? So we really want to bring them on board. We want to keep them involved. We want them to still be able to make decisions. They can make decisions on what snack they want before bed within reason. They can make decisions on what pajamas they want to wear, what book they want to read before bed. These are all choices your children can make. They don't have a choice that it's bedtime. So we really want to bring them on board. We want to, do things that will help them celebrate success. When kids are about 3 years old, we like to introduce a reward chart. The families that I work with, I provide them with a reward chart so that they can, post it in the bedroom, and they can, either put stickers or check marks as their child has, done the things that need to be done. Obviously, the hardest ones to achieve are I stayed in my bed all night long, or I stayed in my bed until the light came on. Those are a work in progress, right? But they'll be able to see that, I put my toys away. I brushed my teeth. I, put my pajamas on. Like those are all things that your child can get easily, right? So success, right? But the other things we have to work towards, right? And so we want to build their confidence. And, sometimes we offer rewards, during this time. We get a little box and we, maybe take our kids to the dollar store, or, maybe even find some things from around your house that maybe they forgot about. Put them into a box, let them know what's inside there. And like, these are the rewards we're working towards, right? If you stay in your bed all night long until the light comes on, this is what you're going to get, right? And children love a good incentive, and it's got to be something your child loves, right? If they don't love, Play-Doh, like you're not going to use that as an incentive, right? You have to find something that they are going to be motivated by in order for them to continue to be successful. We really want to minimize those night wakings. I'm going to have to whip through here now that I see the time. There are strategies we can put into place, right? We want to make sure your child is well fed before bedtime so that they are not hungry. Make sure your dinner, if possible, can have, a mix of, protein, carbs, healthy fats and that, so that your child isn't, hungry overnight or isn't hungry before bed. Toddlers will snack 24/7. Okay. They could have just had a feast for dinner, and 10 minutes later, they're asking you for a snack. I think my daughter asked for about literally 6 snacks after dinner yesterday, and I was losing my mind. But it happens. And when they go through a growth spurt, sometimes they're legitimately hungry. She legitimately had a banana and then yogurt and then a rice cake, right? And she just was going. And so offer that snack before bedtime, healthy choices. We try and, do fridge options versus cupboard at this time. If your child is potty trained, make sure you're using the washroom before bed, and that you are limiting fluids between dinner and bedtime. A lot of children will wake up overnight to use the washroom. One, because they need to, and two, because it's a stalling tactic. It's also a time for them to build connection with you. So if they're waking up every night to use the washroom, and often you're taking them, but nothing's happening, they don't need to go to the washroom. They're looking for connection with you. Quite often, we are missing that building connection piece with our kids. I'm guilty of this as well. We lead busy lives, right? And so sometimes our kids come home from school and we are so focused on making dinner, doing the dishes, helping someone with homework, whatever it may be, that we kind of forget to connect with our kids, to sit down, take a few minutes, play a game, do a puzzle, color, chat, whatever it may be. Build connection with your kids. I promise you, it does make a difference. I see it in my own children when I pay attention to them after school and when I don't pay attention to them after school. When bedtime rolls around and I haven't paid attention to my 4-year-old like I normally do, she is unruly. She starts to get really silly. She's rolling off her bed. She's doing all kinds of things, right? And then I do a self-check, why is she acting like this? She normally doesn't do this. Oh, hang on. When we came home today, we came home late. Then we had dance, and then we did this, and then we did that. And so there was no connection being built. That's a key piece. So if you're not doing that already, I encourage you to carve a few minutes into your day to do that. If you're already doing it, then great. We also want to make sure we have a consistent bedtime and awake time, even on weekends. Keep things the same, right? Your child has an internal clock, just like you do. And we automatically wake at, specific times. So we want to keep it the same. Children wake overnight sometimes. This is not an uncommon thing, but we want to make sure that we're not reinforcing these wakings to continue. We want to keep them super boring. All of a sudden you're sleeping, your child ends up at your bedside, you wake up startled because there they are standing, staring at you. Get up out of your bed. I know you're tired, but get up, walk them straight back to their room, put them in their bed. Try to avoid, signs of affection at this time. It's not that I'm telling you not to be affectionate with your child. I want you to be, just not in the middle of the night. If you are hugging and kissing, holding hands, picking them up and bringing them back to their room, these are all connection building, actions that are happening that will promote your night wakes to continue. Sometimes it's as simple as, we've tucked them back in and gave them, a kiss on the head, good night. Well, like, who doesn't want a kiss from their parent? So, just that, I didn't have that connection before bed, so I'm going to seek it from you in the middle of the night. That's what's happening, right? So keep those night wakings super simple, super boring. Gently walk them back to their room, get them into their bed. Avoid, kissing, hugging, hand holding, and those things. We want it to be boring. If you are using, soothing methods to get your child to sleep, like gradually work away from them. Offer less and less support, each day. We also just want to make sure, like, if you have to walk your child back to their bed 10 times, do it. If you walk them back to their bed 10 times and on the 11th time you buckle and either get into bed with them or bring them into your bed, all of that hard work that you did has gone out the window. So please, I beg you to stay consistent. I know it's hard, but keep going at it. I promise you, if you stay consistent, those walkbacks will become less and less each night, and they will get the memo. Toddlers have stall tactics, right? They're afraid of the dark, right? So before bed, like, do a walkthrough, open the closet, look under the bed, show them like everything's good. So that, at least we have acknowledged their fears. We don't want to disregard their fears in any way, but we also don't want to hyper focus on them, right? We want to acknowledge them. We want to show them everything's good. And we want to make them feel comfortable and confident in their sleep space. So, like, use a flashlight, make it fun, do what you got to do. Make sure all their needs are met. This is a really key thing as well. Review and discuss your expectations. Avoid any negotiations. Toddlers love a good negotiation. They can go on and on and on. Don't let them. Stop them. Redirect, and remember, like, you are in charge of what's happening here. And so you do have to, lay that foundation for them. I know I'm gonna talk about this strategy kind of quickly because I know we're going to run out of time. So I just need like 5 more minutes. So this sleep training method, if you've ever looked up sleep training methods, I'm sure you have seen this one. This is a method that I use with all of my toddler families, whether they're in a crib or in a bed. And I really love this method because it is very much a gradual release of responsibility. If your child has been used to you laying with them or co-sleeping or being assisted to sleep, this is a really nice method to implement. And it's nice because it allows you to be present and in the room while your child is falling asleep, which is what your child really wants. The good thing is there's like light at the end of the tunnel because we, as much as we want to be there for our children, we, have other things to do. We might, have other children or a job to, attend to. So we don't always have, a 2-hour time slot every night for bedtime. And so, yes, this does take work to implement. It does take time. It generally happens between a 10 and maybe 14-day window. And essentially what it looks like, in case you haven't heard of it, is you would place a chair beside your child's bed or crib for 3 nights in a row. And so obviously we would want to model this process to our children. We can't sit in the room, without rules in place. So sitting in the room does have, a few expectations. Your child must stay in their bed if they're in a bed. They must stay lying down and they must stay quiet while you sit there while they fall asleep. Your job is really just to be there. Your physical presence is enough. You're not going to be holding hands with them, across the bed. You're not going to be rubbing or shushing or anything like that. You're literally just there as a physical presence. You might have to offer support if your child is, protesting. And, maybe if they're, over the age of 3, not listening. So that is, totally fine. But, you are really working on sitting there, being present while your child is falling asleep, and exiting the room once they are fully asleep. And so, the method is here, but obviously it is they're in the bed, you're there, and you can only stay there if they're going to be quiet and lay in their bed. Unfortunately, if they're not going to, do these things, because children generally who are overtired and weren't, modeled this beforehand, get really silly at this time. They're testing your boundaries as well. They're like, oh, this is new. Oh, she's tried all these strategies before. This must be a new strategy she's trying. And so, we do have to, have rules of, listen, I'm happy to stay here while you fall asleep, but I will only stay here if you're going to be, lying here quietly and making sure that you are staying, kind of still in your bed. If they're getting silly and rolling around and things like that, this is a no. So they get one warning. You can give them a warning. Listen, I see you're acting a little bit silly. That's your warning. If you're not going to, follow through, then I'm going to have to leave. Your kids don't want you to leave. They want you to stay, but they're going to test your boundary to see if you're going to follow through. And so there he is or she, rolling around, talking to you, whatever it may be. If they talk to you, don't talk back. Sit there quietly. But, if you have to, you're going to get up and you're going to try and exit the room. Guaranteed your child is going to follow you. This is, very typical. You're going to turn around, redirect your child back to their bed, and, explain that if they aren't going to stay, that you're going to have to, completely leave the room. Again, they're probably going to test a boundary, see what's going to happen. Sometimes you'll make it all the way out of the room before they come after you. You have two options. You can either, open the door, ask them to get back into their bed before you return to the room. Or some families are comfortable with gently, holding the door and speaking to their child through the door, asking them to return to their bed before you can come back into the room. And so if your child, follows your instructions and goes back into their bed, then you're absolutely coming back into the room to sit on the chair while they fall asleep. But if they are not following, then you're going to stay on the other side of the door until they follow through. It is tough. I mean, but if you don't follow through, it's just going to be that much harder the next time you try, right? So you've got to stay consistent. You've got to have clear boundaries in place. And, over, kind of a 10-day period, we try like 3 days beside the crib or bed, 3 days kind of mid-room, 3 days by the door. And generally by day 10, there's no chair in the room. And we're really just kind of leaving and checking on your child. And so these are the strategies that, we put in place to kind of help get better sleep. It is a gradual process. It does take time, patience, and consistency, but I promise it does work if you implement it and stay consistent. Last but not least, we all know that if you are a well-rested parent, you are so much happier. I get to have a smile on my face because I know that my kids sleep well at night. Is sleep perfect in my house all the time? Absolutely not. Sometimes my kids go to bed later and then we have early morning, rising and things don't always go as planned. But I can tell you about 95% of the time, sleep is wonderful in my house. And it allows me to be more present and loving and more patient most of the time. So yes, I encourage you to, try out some of these strategies and get sleep back into your life. And if you are looking for support, I can absolutely help with that. Here's my contact info, and Kids and Co families do get 15% off sleep programs with me. You can use the code Kidco 15 off at checkout, and that will get you an amazing discount. But if you, want to book a call with me, I do 15-minute complimentary calls, and we can discuss, what strategy might be best for you and what sleep program would be best for your family. Thank you. Sorry, I went a few
So
minutes
much.
over.
No worries. It is all such helpful information. So it's great that you're able to get through everything. We do have quite a few questions, so we'll try and get a couple of them in.
Not that.
If we are not able to answer your question today, you have Alana's contact information on the screen here. And
Yes,
also, if
please.
you would like to reach out with us and we can forward along your questions, we can do that as well. So just note them down if we aren't able to get to them. So our first question is, what are some tips to have two kids sleeping in the same room, ages 3.5 and 21 months?
Yeah, well, in order to get them to share a room, they both have to be sleeping well. That's a number one tip. So many children share a room, right? And so, that's sometimes just the dynamics of the household. And so, in order for them to sleep well, you do have to make sure they both have good sleep hygiene. So if one is not sleeping well and the other one does, you really would want to remove the other one from the equation while you implement some sleep training strategies to get that other child sleeping well before kind of marrying them back in the room together. But if everyone's sleeping well, then we absolutely, want to have them on, the same kind of routine. At this age, they're generally going to bed at roughly the same time. So I would, just kind of keep your routine and everything, cohesive. Sometimes if one child is going to bed, slightly later than the other, maybe the younger one is going to bed at 7 and the other one's 7:30. We're always going to put the younger one to bed first. And then, have some one-on-one time with that other child in another room. Make sure, younger child has fallen asleep completely before you bring back in the other child to tuck them in for their bedtime. But the key is to make sure that they both have really solid sleep skills before you allow them to share the space.
You. From Raheem, sometimes mom puts the kids to bed, sometimes it's dad. Each of us has a different style and approach to bedtime. Should we align ourselves, or is it okay to have unique routines for each parent?
Listen, at the end of the day, every parent kind of has their own spin on things, right? My husband is the fun, energetic, one before bed, and I am the opposite, right? I'm like, let's tone it down. So you can absolutely have your own kind of spin on things, but your strategy has to be the same. If mom is not, lying with, their child to fall asleep, but dad is, then that kind of leads to, the child favoring the dad, for bedtime because, oh, dad lies with me. So like, I want dad to do bedtime. So you want your, alignment to be, the same for your sleep strategies, but like in terms of like how your bedtime routine is conducted, totally fine to be different in that sense.
And what is an ideal room temperature for a toddler to sleep in?
I talk in Celsius because of obviously where we live, but so generally between 20 and 23 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit in case that's where you are. But yes, you can do the conversion maybe. I'm sorry.
Course, yes. And another question for you is, for a 3.5-year-old, how do you tell the difference between them being overtired and behavior/slash delays occurring because they want more time with their parents or to play?
This is a tough one. You have to look at your schedule, number one. What time are they waking? Are they napping? What time are they going to bed? Like those are key pieces there, and I don't know that information. If they're waking early, not napping, and going to bed late, absolutely overtired, right? We're generally looking for like kind of a 12 to 13 hour day and then maybe, 11 to 12 hour night, kind of depending. So you kind of got to factor that into play. And then, if you're wondering if your child's seeking connection, they probably are. And it's just because, like I mentioned before, we live a really busy lifestyle, right? And we're like always working and always trying to do the next thing. We're always like one step ahead of everything. And so I just encourage you to, have that golden time with your kids. Is it possible every day? No, right? I mean, I'd be lying if I said I did it every day. Do I want to? Yes. But I mean, if your kid has siblings, like great. That's what I tell my kids. Like, this is why I had all you guys. You guys can play together. But sometimes they just want like attention from you, right? So if you're not able to carve that out, like when you get home and things like that, like start your bedtime routine maybe a little earlier so you can, have more time, in that piece. But yes, I do encourage you to make sure you are building that connection piece every single day where you can. And on days that you can't, like make up for it on the weekend kind of thing. Your child, is not counting the minutes. They're counting the quality that they're getting with you.
Thank you for that. And we have a couple of questions pertaining to when a child is sick and if there should be any adjustments made for that. Um, so
Yes.
just is it okay to break some of your normal routines when a child is sick, and how can you go about that?
Yes. So honestly, this is where I get so many return clients when their kids have been sick or they've gone on vacation. So listen, when your kids are sick, you are absolutely going to respond sooner to things and, maybe have a contact nap where you didn't. And, things might alter slightly, but you really do want to keep your routines and that the same. When kids are sick, they need even more sleep for their body to recover. But as parents, we go into this mode of, oh my gosh, I have to change everything because my child is sick. Bring them into our bed, or I'm going to go sleep in their bed. And honestly, yeah, my daughter was sick a few weeks ago with a really bad ear infection. I have never slept in her room until a few weeks ago. She's 4.5. I slept in her bed. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm like going to create a monster from this scenario. But I did it because she was in pain, screaming, her ear hurt. I mean, absolutely go do it, right? There's nothing wrong with doing it. What you just want to make sure of is that you're not doing it day after day after day. Because honestly, it actually only takes one time. So I slept with her that night, never slept in her bed before. The following night, said to my husband, I was like, oh God, she's going to ask me to sleep with her tonight. And she didn't. But then the next night after that, the water work started. She wanted me to sleep in her bed. I want you to lie with me. I want you to this and that. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so as a sleep consultant, I was like, oh, no, I'm not actually going to come and sleep in your bed. I will, come in your bed and read you a story and we'll snuggle and we'll do all of those things, but I can't stay in your bed. Mommy has her bed. My back hurts. I have to go sleep there. And I mean, I managed to convince her otherwise, but she woke up in the middle of the night, came looking for me, wanted me to sleep in her bed. So this is what I mean. Like, it only takes one time to really like muck up the way that they, are programmed. I don't regret staying with her that night. She needed me, right? So just know that when you do make changes to sleep, you've got to like hop back on your other bandwagon like really quick. Otherwise, things go sideways and you're like calling me up to come fix the situation. But yes, respond sooner, provide all, the love that you need and whatever, but really try to avoid changing all of the routines just because your kid's sick.
Well, thank you so much. That unfortunately concludes our time for questions. But if you, like I said, have more questions that you would like answered, your contact information is on the screen, and you can always reach out to us as well to have that forwarded to you. Thank you so much again, Alana, for coming and speaking with us today. It's always so nice to have you.
Thank you for having me again.
Of course. Thank you everyone for coming out as well. And thank you for your questions in the chat. It's always wonderful to have a live conversation and be able to answer your questions that someone else may have been thinking of that didn't come to their mind at first. I would also like to remind everyone that as you're exiting the session today, there will be a short survey popping up. So if you just want to take a quick minute to write us and Alana some feedback, we would really appreciate it. But
Absolutely.
Alana, thank you so much again, and we'll see everyone next month on February 18th for our next Kidco Talk.
Thank you so much. And yes, email me if we didn't answer your question. I'm sorry. I saw there were so many questions there. I was like, oh my goodness. So yes, if you're curious, yes, send me an email, send me a message on Instagram. Happy to chat. And good luck, everyone. Thank you so
Have a great
much.
day.
Take care. Bye.